Okay, hello. Welcome back to my OG Reflections YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be having a reaction video. This is a religious video by a YouTube channel called Towards Eternity. Towards Eternity, which is a YouTube channel. There's actually a YouTube channel for it in English, and there's another one also for it in Arabic. Same channel, same people, and we're going to be reacting to 7 future technologies in the Quran. Okay, 7 future technologies in the Quran. So let's start straight away. Mhm. Mhm. Let's explore. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, he just prefaced the video, introduced the video by talking in general about the Quran in general. Let me just also say that the Quran in general is not a scientific book. In other words, it's not a book of science, right? But it hints, right? It hints towards certain things, and obviously, it has to be something that is like the Quran. When you read it, for example, 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and now at the same time, right? Everybody's gonna read it and understand it. So it has to be some sort of language that is universal, universally understood, right? For time-wise. So certain verses or certain words, they are hints rather than telling you ABC, 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 right? They're hints, okay? Hints towards bigger pictures. However, the hints are clear and they are scientific. But it's not a scientific book, it's not a book of science, not solely science, but it hints towards science. Surat An-Naml. Mhm. 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 Teleported. Yeah. True. Okay. Never thought about that. Mm. Okay, before we move on to this part, yes, this is interesting because in Surah An-Naml, Prophet Sulaiman, Sayyidina Sulaiman, he says, Yes, يا أيها الملأ أيكم يأتيني بعرشها قبل أن يأتوني مسلمين. Someone else says قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا أتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك. I will bring it here before, you know, in a blink of an eye. Now, that's very interesting because I don't know if you've ever watched a film called Interstellar, very, very famous film, Interstellar, and when I was watching Interstellar, near the end of the film, that's what I thought about, right? Because he sort of, the main character, played by Matthew McConaughey, reaches a point where like time doesn't exist, or in other words, future, present, and the past, they all merge together, right? So a person can control time as if it's like a totally different dimension. Now, this is interesting because this might be related to the jinn, okay? Because the jinn, they see us, right? We don't see them, and maybe they can control time to some extent, okay? Maybe. So that's why he was able to bring it very, 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 very fast in the blink of an eye. And anyway, the guy in the video was mentioning that this is sort of related, like sending and texting and sending messages and sending videos and whatnot, and live broadcast, which is something I never thought about before, but nevertheless, it's very interesting. Okay, let's move on.
In Surah An-Naml verse 18, it is mentioned that he understood the language of ants. And in verse 22, the language
of birds. Okay.
So what kind of sign is given here? In fact, understanding the language of animals indicates that in the future, people might be able to understand how animals communicate and what they are capable of. After all, we know that Sulaiman a.s. knew their language, discovered their abilities, and used them in his work. And when you think about it, if we fully understand the capabilities of animals, we could give them tasks in many areas of daily life. This is actually something we have already started doing. Pigeons have been used for sending messages and letters. Parrots have been trained to talk. We have figured out how to use silkworms to make clothes. Similarly, we have, in a way, learned the language of dogs and used their strong sense of smell to fight narcotic crime. Certain species of mice are also used in mine detection because of their highly sensitive noses. And we use dolphins' advanced sonar abilities in submarine search and rescue missions,
radar,
as well as in finding sea mice.
GPS and whatnot.
So, Sulaiman a.s.'s miracle of understanding the language of animals and using them for certain tasks shows that we may discover more of their abilities and find new ways to benefit from them in the future. There are thousands of animal species on Earth. As we learn to understand their languages and train
billions, to be honest,
what we can achieve together with them may go far beyond our imagination. Another miracle granted to
Okay, excellent, very good. I mentioned before in a video, which I'm going to put up here, that Prophet Solomon was given certain miracles, remember, so that when a person comes later on and does something similar, they may not be lured or tempted. Okay, Prophet Solomon did it, other prophets did similar things, but they were given it, you know, by the command of God, right? So it was given to them. Other people may come later on and, you know, claim that they do fantastic things, but that doesn't mean that they're prophets. That doesn't mean that they're good people. That doesn't mean that we should listen to them. Very good. So regarding the language of animals, yes, for sure, yeah. It is mentioned in Surah An-Naml that the ants were talking, and this is scientifically proven that animals do produce signals and sounds to each other, right? Just like most other species as well, most other animals. And yeah, the concept of taskhir that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to control everything, right? If we wanted to, really, if we really worked hard, okay, and we can control these things to our own advantage. Even lions, tigers, you know, you can tame them, you can have them as pets, believe it or not, right? So that is very true. That is very interesting. Okay.
Sulaiman a.s. was his ability to control the wind. By
the wind
so,
as well.
He could travel long distances in a very short time. In Surah Saba, Allah says, "And for Sulaiman, we subjected the wind. In his journey in the morning was equal to the journey of 1 month. And its journey in the afternoon was equal to the journey of another month. This verse describes how a journey that would normally take a month could be completed in just a part of the day. Isn't this a clear hint at future technologies like airplanes? Think about it. Today, with new technologies, we calculate how to use the wind, combine the right materials, and build airplanes. And just like the sign in the verse, we now complete long journeys in a very short time.
True.
We can even
Traveling
more than one country on the same day. Journeys that once took a whole month now take just a few hours. Another miracle was that, right?
Okay, excellent. Yes, that is hinted for sure 100% in the Quran that future transportations والخيل والبغال والحمير لتركبوها وزينة ويخلق ما لا تعلمون. والخيل horses, والبغال right mules, والحمير donkeys, لتركبوها to be able to ride. Okay, وزينة they're used for decoration as well. ويخلق ما لا تعلمون, and other things that you do not know will be created or are created in general. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is hinting towards the Sahaba or the people that received the revelation at the very beginning that other things will come later on in the future. Another verse in Surah Yusuf, وكأي من آية في السماوات والأرض يمرون عليها وهم عنها معرضون. Right? Any signs that they pass, these signs may be on land or in the air. They pass signs in the air. How can we pass? Or 1400 years ago, almost 1400 years ago plus, how could they pass by signs in the heavens or in the air? Okay, of course, this is hinting towards that maybe this is going to happen in the future, right? Which happened already now, right? And is happening now. Being able to travel by planes, being able to travel by spaceships, okay, traveling, exploring space and whatnot. All of these, there are signs above, right above. Excellent.
Ibrahim was thrown into the fire, yet it did not burn. The tyrant ruler Nimrod became furious with him and ordered his men to prepare a massive fire. But when Ibrahim was thrown into the flames, something shocking happened. The fire did not harm him at all. Of course, this was a miracle that happened specifically for this great prophet. But at the same time, we can also see signs for the future in this miracle. In addition to Ibrahim not being burned by the fire, his clothes were not burned either. And once again, this gives humanity a goal. In the future, fire-resistant materials could be developed to protect people from flames. And in fact, by the mid-20th century, for the first time, flame-resistant clothing began to be produced, especially for firefighters. In the 1960s, special materials like Nomex and Kevlar were discovered. Nomex can withstand temperatures up to 370 degrees Celsius and has a higher resistance to catching fire, while Kevlar can endure heat up to 450 Celsius.
Wow.
With these innovations, firefighters can now resist flames more effectively, and this helps them stay protected for several minutes during emergency rescue operations. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Musa alayhi salam.
Okay, that's very interesting. I never thought about that, but he said that Prophet Ibrahim, when he was thrown into the fire by the people, obviously nothing happened to him because it was bardan wa salama, right? It was, an easy fire. It was cold, right? Peaceful. But he mentioned also that his clothes were intact, right? Nothing happened to his clothes, which I never thought about that before. But yeah, interesting.
Strikes a rock with his staff, and suddenly 12 springs gush out.
Prophet Musa.
Single touch of a staff, a dry, lifeless rock in the middle of a barren desert turns into a source of abundant water. 12 springs start flowing, and the people suffering from thirst finally drink from them. But what other messages were hidden in this miracle? It actually showed that extracting water from underground is possible. In other words, it seemed to point to the drilling technology that we use today. This method dates back to the 19th century. Drilling machines have allowed us to access underground water, oil, and other natural resources. So seeing water emerge from a rock at the strike of a staff has inspired people to imagine future technology. In the ayah, there was a sign of drilling machines long before they were invented. In Surah Al Imran, Isa salam, also known as Jesus, says, "And I cure the born blind and the leper, and bring the dead back to life by the permission of Allah."
Yeah, actually, before he even continues, I'm pretty sure I know what he's going to say. Remember, as I mentioned before in previous videos, but these prophets were given miracles again because they're hinting that it's going to happen later on. Because imagine if the doctor was the first one to cure someone's eyes, right? Imagine if he was the first person to do that, then people would be tempted. People would start to worship this doctor. People would start to say, "Oh my God, how did you do that? How did you do that? Oh my God, you're so fantastic, blah, 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 blah," and they would start to praise him and worship him. Okay, but it was done already, okay, by a prophet and by God's command. So in other words, when it happens later on, you don't be tempted, you don't be lured, you don't forget yourself. Okay, it all happened by the grace of God. So certain prophets were given these miracles, hinting that it's going to happen later on.
These are some of the most well-known miracles of Isa scientists. Let's now take a closer look at one of them, healing those born blind.
Blind and
Today,
lepers.
with
Okay.
advancements like gene therapy and stem cell treatments, some forms of congenital blindness can actually be treated. Again, until the 20th century, leprosy had no cure, but today it can be treated with certain medications for a period of 6 months to 2 years. In fact, nowadays, except in certain regions, the number of leprosy cases has dropped to almost zero.
Wow.
Zaman explains that this verse gives the following message. Even the most chronic diseases and severe health problems can have solutions. No matter what the illness is, cure is possible. Keep searching.
Interesting.
And you will find. The last and most astonishing sign is in the miracle of Sulaiman alayhi salam bringing the jinn under his command and making this work for good. By Allah's will, Sulaiman alayhi salam made the jinns dive into the seas to bring out precious gems, build magnificent structures, and do all sorts of difficult tasks for him. The Zaman says that there are many signs in these miracles and that the jinns could actually be controlled and become servants to humans in their role. But of course, this will not happen through things like fortune telling, magic, or other practices that go against Islamic principles. He says it could be possible through some hidden secrets within the Quran. Of course, we still don't know how this could be achieved, but while this remains a mystery today, it may well become a reality in the future. At this point, you might be wondering, why didn't the Quran mention these things explicitly? It is because the Quran's main purpose isn't to give direct explanations about science or technology. After all, it is not a textbook on these subjects. The Quran's main topics are Tawheed, the oneness of God,
monotheism,
prophethood, justice, and worship. But since technological discoveries are also blessings from Allah, and they have become such a big part of human life, the Quran doesn't completely ignore them either. So, as the All-Wise, Allah mentioned them through signs and hints. Also, there are two more important reasons for this. First, if technological inventions and scientific discoveries had been directly mentioned in the Quran so that it could address the last 1 or 2 centuries, people who lived in the previous 12 centuries wouldn't have fully understood. Some might have even found it unrealistic. And that would go against the Quran's characteristic of being a universal book. I mean, think about it. Just 100 years ago, if you had told people that video calls would be possible, no one would believe you. That's why these discoveries are hinted at in the Quran through science rather than being stated explicitly. If all technological and scientific discoveries were openly mentioned, wouldn't that contradict the whole idea of being tested? As we know, life is a test. And if everything was obvious, there would be no room for disbelief. Everyone would believe. And that would take
But at the same time, before, I don't want to interrupt the guy, but he says, there's a verse in the Quran which says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. Okay, we will show them the signs verily in themselves, and in the universe, right? So that they know that it is the right thing. Wallahu alam, God knows best.
The purpose of free will, because it would make it possible to distinguish between sincere believers and those who only accept faith because they have no other choice. That is why these things are mentioned in a way that lets people reflect, search, and decide for themselves. Finally, the most important thing to understand from all this. All these signs in the Quran that inform us about the future give us a clear message. This cannot be the word of a human being. No person, on their own, could provide information that speaks to all people across all times
at the same time.
The words of an ordinary human cannot contain timeless wisdom and lessons for every society. These words can only belong to the Creator who brought everything into existence from nothing, who is beyond time and who knows everything. That is Allah. We may have discovered only a very small part of the miracles in the Quran, and as new discoveries are made, we may find even more hidden miracles within this timeless book. And when that happens, some people's faith will grow stronger, while others will keep making excuses.
Subhanaka Rabbi. True. Okay, that was very interesting. That's a very interesting video. Obviously, there are many future hints anyway mentioned in the Quran, scientific hints, as we said. But yeah, that's very interesting because this video sort of grouped 7 different ones, 7 different things. Some of them I knew, some of them I did not know. But anyway, as we said, the Quran is hinting towards scientific things because our minds won't be able to grasp it fully 100%. And 14 years ago, of course, their minds wouldn't have been able to grasp. So as he said at the end, right, stop making excuses, right? Sometimes we just have to firmly believe, okay, even if it is hinted at or just mentioned as a word or whatever. But Sometimes we have to believe. We don't need necessarily like 100% proof, as long as we have proof, or we have sufficient proof already. Okay, proof, whether it's in the Quran itself, right, the religious revelation, or in the universe, right, the natural things that we see, right, or in the daily elements, the daily things that happen to you. Meaning what? Meaning, born as a Muslim, for example, you as a Muslim, you have the Quran already, right? You have the prophetic hadiths, okay? You have some Islamic traditions. So that's number one, okay? That's enough. But what if, for example, you were born as a non-Muslim, okay, and you don't have this? Then looking at the universe already is sufficient to believe in one creator, to resort to monotheism, okay, to put your hand on your forehead on the ground and start worshipping up to the sky. Okay, all the signs in the universe are enough. And number three, the daily things that happen to me, to you, all of these I think are sufficient, right? Personal elements, the personal signs, like wanting something and then it actually happens, asking for guidance, asking for help, okay? These miracles in themselves, the personal things that happen, that make us firmly believe, yes, there is a creator, there is a God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Interesting. Very, very good. So this video, yeah, we watched it on Towards Eternity. It's a very good channel. And okay, I guess that's us for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time. Good, good, good.